Thanks.
All right, you guys are live.
Good. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Charter Revision Commission's what might be our final meeting. It is the 2nd of September, 7 minutes after 5. And I welcome everybody, and I trust everyone is safe after what we went through yesterday. Takia, could you give us a roll call?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Andy Hare.
Here.
Paul Rankin.
Here.
Eileen Leahy.
Here.
Lawrence Harris Jr. Ronald Schneider.
Here.
Minor Carter. Jeffrey Duran.
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Yes. Benjamin Mednick. Robert Tufts.
Here.
Okay. Roll call is complete.
And we have a quorum. We were in the preamble, we actually talked a bit about Paul has a commitment, so he has to break off at 7:15. We have an awful lot of ground to cover tonight, so I will do my very best to speed up matters and to make this as run through this as quickly as we possibly can. We shared the minutes from the August 17th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved. Move that be adopted.
Hearing
Second.
any objections? Hearing none, they're approved. Item 4 of the agenda, public testimony and comment. Madam Secretary, do we have any public testimony or comments?
No.
Move to item 5 of the agenda, committee reports. I will provide actually a very brief report on the executive committee's meeting last Thursday, the 29th. We had a discussion primarily centered on preparing the report and figuring out how to best run tonight's meeting. So it was a relatively tight and short meeting, and minutes will be circulated. In terms of committee reports, I'm going to pass on specific committee reports because we're going to need all the time we can to go into specific discussions on proposals. So I'll go right into the chairman's report. This will be the final scheduled meeting that we know of. We're, I guess, making a presumption that we will not have an additional meeting. We agreed in the last meeting to make sure that this was the final scheduled meeting. I would like to thank each and every one of you for your contributions, not only over the entire 6 months that we have been a commission, but more importantly, over the past few weeks. And I have to apologize for my pirouette on going from Google Docs over to Microsoft Word. But in terms of trying to merge all our comments, it made life significantly easier. I'd like to just quickly go through the purpose of tonight's meeting. We're going to go through each of our proposals, and we're going to determine, hopefully seeking a consensus, on where we stand on each of the proposals we have in front of us. I think it's been mentioned on several occasions that the majority view will be the view that gets reported into our final report. Finally, I think it would be important to talk about the remaining timeline between now and when the report has to be submitted to the City Council. We're on a very, very tight schedule, as I've mentioned before. This particular meeting is key. I'm going to explain the process of the meeting in a moment. But as I said, we're going to cover all the proposals, many of which we've discussed during the work session in a fair amount of detail. So quite honestly, I don't think we're going to be tamping on new ideas or new ground as much as we're going to be deciding exactly which way we would like to go with this particular report. The second part of the timeline is there is a draft. Unfortunately, it's got an awful lot of warts in it. It's ugly. This was what we've been combining over the last 2 weeks. The draft, we hope, and I keep my fingers crossed, will be circulated tomorrow. Right now, it's sitting at 14 pages. I believe it could go float up or float down. So it's actually a fairly substantial report, but there's going to be a request that I have of all of you tonight that each of you read and review it very, very carefully, because this is going to probably be our last run at the full report. I would also suggest, unless I hear an idea to the contrary, that we use email to the entire commission to respond with your views, thoughts, ideas, reactions, anything you have. So if we could use email, that would be actually most helpful. The next item in terms of running through the timeline will be feedback. This is going to come with an apology. We will have to close feedback by the 7th, which is Tuesday. Apologies for the holiday interruption, but to the extent we can get this out and get it into your hands, hopefully you'll have an opportunity to take a full read and hopefully dig into some of the comments. We will have, following that, we will have it proofread by an independent, and I arguably might call it a professional writer, and expect to get her comments back to us by the 9th. They may come back sooner, but we're essentially just giving the proofreader 2 days to pick through this and actually provide detailed comments. The independence of the proofreader, I think, is valuable, because when you stop to think of who is going to be the reader on this, it's absolutely important to have somebody who's never seen this before, never been involved in our discussions, and make sure that can she understand what we're saying and what we're writing about. Granted, there's a little bit of institutional knowledge that the city council will have, but unfortunately, a lot of times we may get lost in very arcane ways of expressing ourselves, and I think the proofreader will help us quite a bit. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to make necessary corrections and circulate back to you, which will be a week from tomorrow by the 10th, the final copy. And then we deliver the final report to the city council on the 13th, which is Monday evening. Are there any comments on that we'd like to add now on this timeline? And again, please accept my apologies for the weekend work, or potentially the weekend work, but hopefully we'll be in a position to have something we can really pick at between now and next Tuesday.
I mean, the only thing I would comment on is as long as the proofreader doesn't change substance and just provides clarity, then sure. I mean, I have some experience in the past where things get changed and the whole meaning gets skewed. So
yeah, this is a professional journalist. This is actually somebody who is a trained journalist. And I've seen her work before, and she's not going to change anything. She's just going to comment on a lot of things. She'll say things like, I don't understand this, or what are you trying to say? And it will then be up to us to make sure we actually get clarity. Now, I would be very surprised if she went well beyond editing this. But Ron, that's a good point.
Plus, we're also going to all see it again
Yes.
on the 9th. So I think we're fine.
Any other comments? Okay, I promised to at least go through the organization of at least the format of what we're going to do tonight. But I thought it'd be good to explain what the report looks like right now. And I don't think it's actually a mystery to anyone, because we've all had, I guess, a fairly good idea of the contributions we've made. But we're going to start, and this is going to be important to understand, but we're going to start with something called an executive summary, or we'll call it a prologue, essentially just to set the stage of where we've been as a commission, where the charter has been and where we're going. So it's hopefully going to be a nice reflection back, but also a look forward. So I'd like to thank Paul for at least taking the first run at writing the next section, with section 2, which will be a brief history of the charter. Fascinating, very fascinating read. So anybody that reads this is going to at least know the historical significance of the charter itself. Next section, we're going to have, and we've talked about this almost in every single commission meeting, we'll actually have a preamble with the expressed hope that both the history that Paul took a run at and the preamble will be adopted. In this executive, and I'm really getting ahead of myself right now, but in this executive summary, we will come forth with the idea that the recommendation that this charter needs to be rewritten. And we're trying to use the right language and the right words to make sure that the city council just doesn't see their assignment as taking specific small items and tweaking the charter, as opposed to really looking at the bigger picture of something that we've discovered over the last 5 to 6 months. The next, yes,
Andy,
Eileen, I'm
Might we
sorry.
use a different word than preamble just to keep it from being confused with the preamble of the charter? Are you thinking like a foreword or?
Yes, forward is, yeah, unfortunately, we're just not sure what the title should be. And as you read this, recommendations on the title of this particular section would be great. Yes, it could be the forward, it could be the synopsis, it could be, but we don't want it to lose the gravitas that says, these are a summary of our recommendations. This is what this august group has come up with over the last 5 to 6 months. Good point, Eileen. Yeah, but as you reread this, feel free to make recommendations or even cross it out and say, I don't like the name of that. So yes, the preamble is something we have executive summary, or what do we call it? Prologue, or whatever we're going to call it. The history, then the preamble, and then each individual section. And this is the materials that you've been sending to us over the last, well, we've been talking about it for the last 5 months, but the materials you've been sending over the last 2 weeks, roughly 2 weeks. And so there will be maybe 5 or 6 additional sections behind it, each covering one particular point that we're trying to get across. Well, we don't have much. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean
No. Please.
But my thought on executive summary, we talked, I don't know, weeks ago about elevator speech, okay? The executive summary that we submit needs to be a very concise statement that we can say in 5 minutes on an elevator ride from the first floor to the 16th floor that says, here is what we did here. Not what we did, but here's the rationale behind our recommendations. And part of that needs to be that we did lots of research. We did research. We talked to lots of people, and here are the 2 or 3 or 5 things that we think. And one of those would be, first and foremost, you have to review this whole thing from a legal and a functional point of view, and say, here's what's wrong with the current charter, and here's what needs to be updated. And then we have done lots of research and have recommendations, research-based, to achieve this objective for the city. That's what I think the executive summary needs to be.
Okay.
I agree. It needs to be pretty succinct and concise. I agree with Ron.
Any other thoughts? Oh,
I think that's right. I think that's the approach that we ought to follow.
Okay, fair enough. We've already, Ron, I've taken a stab at writing this, and it's anything but succinct. It's a narrative. And what it's trying to do is explain, and I can share the copy with you, but it's trying to explain who we are, and it's trying not to be if I can use the word, it's not trying to be pedantic and too clinical. It's trying to be a narrative. It's trying to get somebody ready to read what they're about set to read. The very last portion of this is what you just said. It's the recommendations. And that's, maybe 5 or 6 sentences long. But
I mean, I think you need to establish your basis of your gravitas for doing this. And then you need to say, here are the features of what we are proposing. And here are the benefits to the city that derive from those features.
Okay.
So here's what our charter is. Here's how we executed it. Here's the benefits of implementing our recommendations. Here are the key points of our recommendations. And there'll be 3 or 4 things or 5 things. And then here's the benefits that the citizens and the city of Annapolis derive from implementing these recommendations.
Okay. The existing copy right now, as I said, the last part of it covers that except for the benefits part. It
I
doesn't.
think you can just take, in effect, this is like a introduction to a document that is being submitted to a legal journal, whatever. You're always putting in a synopsis at the top, so you could take that bottom 4 sentences or 5 sentences, Andy, just roll it up to the top, add a executive summary, add a benefit to the city, which is 2 or 3 things. We're going to make everything work better, and then move into your narrative, because you do still have to explain, which you do, I think, very well. You have to explain sort of how we operated, how we got set up, and so forth, because that's also going to be a benefit to the next group 10 years or 2 years down the road. They need a guidepost.
And I wrote it with that eye on it, that I think, and I even said that this committee was formed really without much guidance whatsoever, other than that section 10. So this, hopefully, if somebody reads it, and we can, I tell you, we can put it in an annex, and I don't care where it is, but it's trying to help the next group that has to do the exact same thing. This is how we were formed. This is who we are. This is what we looked at. These are the kinds of people we talked to. This kind of work that went into this. So it's trying to at least fortify the efforts over the last 5 months. Yeah, the very last section of recommendations, and I want to get back to Ron's point because I think it's a good one and a valuable one. In that set of recommendations is the recommendation to rewrite. That's where it is. And so it makes sense to put that, but it didn't flow properly, but to put that at the very beginning, because that is basically, one of the most important things we want to get across.
Sure. Because last time, 10 years ago, it was just a bunch of recommendations with no rationale or substantiation. Or
I tried to very politely make that point in how I wrote it, but I think that's a good. And if we have agreement, do we have? Or let me put it differently: do we have any disagreement to phrasing it that way, to actually move the recommendations into a short, crisp overview? Like, I'm using my hands only because there are 5 parts to what I wrote, and we're going to take that 5th one, which are the recommendations, and bring it up to the beginning, and then we'll find a home for the other 4. Okay, hearing no further comments, I will move forward. We're going to go through right now, given the hour and the fact that we do lose Paul after roughly 2 hours, a little short of 2 hours from now. You're going to see something. I'm going to try my best to do this share screen doodah, so you'll be able to hopefully see it on your screen. The thing is, we're going to go through a series of proposals, and we're going to do essentially well, I'll call it, and I know we've been talking about this, basically an up-down vote. Do you agree with it or do you not agree with it? Now, please keep in mind, there is one thing as you read or look or vote. I did my best to try to state all these in the affirmative. That doesn't mean that's the position we're taking. Matter of fact, there's one that comes to mind real quickly that I don't think we should do at all, but I stated it in the affirmative. And I don't mean to, as I explain and walk through this, I clearly don't mean to imply my particular position, or how I would vote, or how I would agree or not agree to this. It's just that's the way we're stating it, if you will. Because we have over 20, I think we have 25 or 26 of these. I'm going to have to limit at least the discussion we have on this to, let's say, no more than 3 minutes. And I hope you'll bear with me. And to the extent we can get some of these dismissed real quickly, that's great, because then we'll be pretty far along. There's a problem though that we're sitting with that I'd like to resolve. There are certain proposals that have been presented that just flat out aren't clear. So it's difficult to understand what's being proposed. And so I'll try my best to at least raise those. And we're going to have to make a decision on whether and quite honestly, one of the decisions we talk about is, if it's not clear now, we'll just get rid of it. We're just going to toss it out. But, I would hate to get rid of a good idea and something we've talked about over the last, I don't know, let's say 3 months, just because of what I'll call a technicality. So as we walk through these, as we see these, please pay attention, if you will, to those. Well, you will, because I'm going to point them out. That's about it. Any questions? I'm going to do my best to do the share screen nonsense right now and see whether I am.
Andy, have you sent this out to everybody that they can look at it on their own?
I have not, and I'd be. Is that good? Is that worthwhile? Do you want me to?
Well, for me, it would be helpful. I mean, I have it. You just sent it to me, but I'm just thinking might be helpful, and then people can take notes also.
Okay.
And I mean, you can do both, but.
Yep. Hold on. Okay, let's move it over. Okay, I'm assuming it's okay if everybody gets in a PDF.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
It
Can you?
is,
Well, okay.
It is on its way. Okay.
Okay.
So
does anybody want the doc? Because you sent me the doc. I can send that out if you want. I mean, the PDF won't let, the way you have it, it won't let you make any notes.
Anybody want the document?
I mean, this is the one on the 27th or after that?
This is what I'm talking about, Andy, what you just sent out tonight, like
Yes.
right
No,
before the
Ron,
meeting.
what
No,
this,
I have it.
Okay.
what this is this is actually a description, or this will be a lead-in of all of the proposals we're going to go through, and it is lengthy. And Mike, you're not on our distro list. You want me to send you a copy of this also?
Yeah, he's on the CRC list along with Jacqueline and Takia. So are you sending it?
Yeah, if you could send it to me, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay.
If you send it in Gmail, it'll go to everybody.
Okay. Now, everybody got 2 copies of it, except for Mike. But Mike's copy is coming in right now for him. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, can you see the screen now? I did the shared screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
You can? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I'm gonna run through these, and I am actually should confirm. I'm gonna make an assumption that Eileen said she would take notes and Takia said she would take notes. And I say that only because I will not take notes. Chair's prerogative, I guess they call it. Okay, let me start. I mentioned before the organization. The first section we have is something called the executive summary. It may be called the prologue. It may be called the synopsis. I'm not happy with any of these terms. And actually, as Ron pointed out, we may do some adjustments here. But what I like to do is this: there's been a draft created and it will be circulated. We've agreed on several occasions that the key recommendation is to rewrite the charter, and we'll make that recommendation in our report. It's already agreed, no votes needed. But when you look at what you're hopefully looking at in front of you, position number 2, now bear with me on some of the numbering of this. It's consistent after this, but I didn't want to confuse Eileen and Paul, who have seen this before, and make it position number 1, because then all our numbering would have been off. So position number 2 is a lot of us have made recommendations on grammatical changes. The thing I would like to propose is move all grammatical changes into a broad statement found in the executive summary. And in the executive summary, what it is a reference to an annex. So we might broadly say a lot of grammatical things need to be fixed, but we're not going to delve into them when we get into the body. So the position I'm proposing is that we move all grammatical changes into a broad statement that will be found in the executive summary.
Does this include the gender neutral pronoun?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And also perhaps obsolete.
Yep.
That works.
Yeah,
Do I hear any,
I'm good with that.
any concerns, any objections? Do I hear approval? Heard approval? Do I hear any objections to that? Okay,
Good,
so,
good.
so position 2 is passed.
Position 1.
Yeah. Oh, Eileen.
Yeah, position 1 on your thing.
Oh, does yours say position 1?
Mine says position 1. So, okay, I have the older version then.
Oh,
All right, I'll just follow what you all are and just make the change.
oh, I'm sorry. I really worked hard this afternoon to try to not confuse you. And I have no idea why it showed up as position 2.
All right. So it's
Yeah, because
right.
they're all sequentially numbered. The position 3 is what we just talked about. In other words, we will have specific recommendations in there. So there would be a very generic statement saying clean up the grammar and so forth. But the specific recommendations was in the executive summary annex. We'll talk about things like gender neutrality and maybe because some have recommended very specific changes to essentially the style and the format with which the charter is written. Do I hear general agreement with position? May I say position 3, Eileen?
Go with you. I'll make my change. I'll renumber it.
Yeah, that works. I have to see how you do it. That works. That sounds reasonable.
I'm in agreement. Yep.
Yep,
Any objection?
good here.
Okay, passed. Okay, position 4. This is on my chart. The preamble, which has been circulated quite a bit, and I'm going to make an assumption that if not all, most of you have read it. It fundamentally focuses on the concept of people. Should the preamble include a commercial interest, enterprises, meaning businesses that are doing business within the city of Annapolis, and expand the scope of the preamble beyond just the people or just the citizens? So in other words, it's a change in the scope of the preamble.
I mean, the term people refers to the collective group of individuals who live, reside, conduct their business in the city of Annapolis. So, I'm not hard over on this, but I think people is an all-inclusive term. Persons, not citizens, not citizens. You could live in this city but not be a citizen of the city and able to vote. So, that was kind of when I looked at this. I was trying to make this a little bit more simple. But
okay, Mike, you had a comment.
Two comments. One, the courts have ruled that companies are persons.
Okay.
And two, a general term of citizen might be, or resident. I like citizen better because it includes folks who may not be resident but have a unique tie because they have a business here. But I would agree too that the comment of people is appropriate, and they haven't found need to change it in the U.S. Constitution, so.
And that's where I went back and because you have to include tourists, right? Right. So, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about.
Technically, the charter and the code is only for those people that are enfranchised, mean they are taxpayers and voters, or if they're minors, they're attached to voters or people who are enfranchised in the city, because they're the only ones who could change anything in it. So, you start to eliminate a lot of different folks when you say it like that, but technically, people who cannot vote can't change this document. And businesses right now do not have a right to vote absent a owner who is also a resident. So people, in order to avoid going down a rabbit hole of differentiation and description, people is the lowest thing on the totem pole that is the problem with the charter,
Here.
Do we have any, this is mine, so do we have any, this particular one is an example of where I said it's phrased positively. So do we have any others that might think positively about this?
About including businesses or enterprises?
No, about should the preamble include enterprise in it? And
I don't agree with that.
okay.
I don't agree with it either.
Okay.
Don't agree either.
Because I think
Okay.
businesses can be owned and operated by people who don't live in the city. And as Mike pointed out, I think
Yeah.
people is an inclusive, the most inclusive term. And we'd have to rewrite the first sentence of the existing charter, which we've not recommended.
And the U.S. Constitution.
And that too.
That's not our job.
Not today.
Fair enough. So I hear dissenting. Do I hear anybody in favor? Hearing none, position 4 is rejected. Position 5 is to accept, and I'm not exactly sure this is a fair position to ask of you, but accept the preamble as it's currently written.
Do we
Well, that's a question. I sent you some comments about other aspects besides persons versus citizens versus people in there that I felt, and you know, there's probably some legal aspect to this where we said, you know, the provision of this charter shall help. And I said, ensure, I mean, help and facilitate and words like that are non-committal. And I mean, if you're going to put words like that in a preamble, why even bother? Because it says you're just going to try, but maybe you're not going to succeed. And I think if the city's serious about some of these things, we need to say, we're going to do this. And it, I mean, doesn't mean that we'll succeed because there are so many exigent factors that make things difficult, but we should have a positive statement about we're not going to assist or try or facilitate or those kinds of words. So that's the other language that I put in there.
Right. Andy, I'm unclear about what we'd be accepting as written because I haven't seen the final proposal. I mean, is there a final, did I miss it? A final draft of this preamble that you're asking us to approve?
I mean, if you look at Ron's recommendations, the last I sent to Andy, it in parentheses, I explained why I changed language in the preamble. So maybe we should just reprint the preamble with all the with the change. I mean, the way I rewrote it and see if that's acceptable or not.
Right.
I mean, I can walk through it right now. I have it printed out here, but you know, in the interest of time.
Right, but there were also some other edits that occurred after what Ron sent. And then, so.
And Eileen, I made an assumption that those were under the full circulation distribution list, though everybody was being able to at least see this.
Yeah, the only edits I saw were before the one that I sent.
But again, there's been so many versions, Andy. Which one are you looking at? You may have sent them out, but
We're going down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we pass on this?
Yeah. I
Yeah, we'll have to.
And I also think we can accept the fact that we're going to revise the preamble probably, so we could adopt the preamble in principle. Then if that's the case, then we can just legitimately and rather easily, I don't think we're very far apart at all, just fight over the text as we do our editing. Because it's a couple of changes that Ron suggested, which seem reasonable, but you know, without seeing it in context, there's no way to make a decision here now.
Okay, so if I can, unless I hear an objection otherwise, we will accept it in principle, which I know is a very loose term, but we will accept it in principle, subject to any other comments that you might have, and it will be in the draft that gets distributed.
And further, might I suggest, Andy, that take it upon yourself to accept or reject any of our comments, Ron's, mine, anyone, and give us new text, and then we'll fight over that.
Yes.
Okay. Any objection to that?
This is Jeff. I don't have any objections, but I do think we're clearly victims of version control at this point. And
Yes.
I think as we distribute documents and make proposed changes, I think it's very simple to do V1, V2, V3, V4. You know, as something gets sent to the central point of contact, which I assume is going to be you, Andy.
Yeah.
It needs to have some version control.
Okay, and I agree.
And I'll just take all my explanations out and send you what I recommend, and then you can figure out how to deal with that. Okay.
Fair enough. Okay, so again, I just so we can move on. On position 5, we're accepting in principle, we're giving the commission the right to further edit,
Yes.
which of course, probably I've said absolutely nothing just there. Or committed to absolutely nothing. Okay, section on elections, position 6. So the statement will be, the board will be made up of 5 residents and registered voters of the city, and 2 of which shall always be from leading political parties of the state, 2 from either of the leading political parties of the state, and 1 registered as unaffiliated. Any discussion on on position 6?
Andy, I was wondering if we could change that last part, 1 registered as an affiliate, to 1 registered as not a Democrat, not a Republican. I know that's sort of a weird way of wording that, but there are currently 3 political parties in the state of Maryland that are recognized that are not Republican or Democrat. And so I think, the idea is to be as inclusive as possible for that 3rd position, and not just limited to unaffiliateds, but to anyone who's a voter that's not registered as a Republican or a Democrat.
Hey, Rob, would you accept, and just to rephrase that, just to anyone registered, or someone registered as any other recognized party of the state, or something like that?
Yeah,
Well,
no,
you
that
know-
makes a lot more sense. That sounds a
Right.
lot better. So, and 1 registered as any other recognized political party or as unaffiliated, something like that.
You
Yeah,
could do that, or you could just say not members of the leading political parties.
Which one do we want?
ooh, what do you think of that, Rob?
I think that works as well. That gets to the same
Right.
I
same
like that.
conclusion.
So
Eileen,
Eileen,
what was
rephrase.
that
Just
again?
Change it to not members of the leading political parties, or not a member. I think you're leaving it just as 1. So it would be 1 registered, but not a member of a leading political party.
Bingo.
Okay, any objection? Hearing none, we will pass that particular provision. Let me go back to position 6 again. The board will be made up of 5, yada, 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 yada. And at the end, not members of the leading political parties.
Not
Any-
a member.
Not a member, registered,
Okay.
but not a member of.
Right.
One of the leading, either of the leading political
It would
parties.
be either.
And any discussion, any further discussion on position 6? Hearing none, can the chair assume position 6 is adopted?
Yes.
Yes,
Position 6 is adopted.
Yes,
Okay. Position 7. This is the nonpartisan. City residents, so the position is this: city residents shall vote on a ballot proposal to determine if the Annapolis municipal elections should be held on a nonpartisan basis. Any discussion?
I would only amend it to say that the citizens shall have the opportunity to vote. Because it can't mandate a vote.
Right, but
I
you
think this,
already have the opportunity to do it. I think this is one of those that kind of got turned. I thought it was going to be something like I don't know. I think it's the wording, but to say provide an opportunity, the opportunity exists already and to have a vote.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, to me, shall vote means that it mandates that citizens don't have to vote, but the only way this happens is if with a majority of citizens who vote.
That's how I'm looking at it. You're suggesting that nonpartisan elections be determined by the voters through a ballot question.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's how I interpreted it.
So
Yes.
this is one, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I sort of wrote this one, Rob, if I'm not mistaken. That language at the top, which is number 2, not position 7, is closer to it, I think. I mean, it was effectively, it said the council shall provide an opportunity for city residents to vote on a ballot proposal to determine if the mayor and alderperson should be elected on a nonpartisan basis. And that I just stole right out of whatever Rob gave me. Was it Hagerstown or something like that?
Mhm.
And I think that's a better way to phrase it. Just put the council shall provide an opportunity for the citizens and adopt that, or propose to adopt that language that appears in the black number 2.
Again, I'm just coming from from election law. The opportunity exists. And if you say the city councils to do it, then you're essentially telling the city council to create the ballot proposal. And that may be a little conflicting. Can you just say recommend citizens to vote on, that citizens vote on it? I guess I'm just caught up on the provide an opportunity, because the opportunity is already available in code.
So I thought the key, I'm sure you're probably right, but, and I'm not even trying to be argumentative. I just thought that it was that the directive would be to the council. It was more complex than this. It was a directive to the council to ensure really that the citizenry has a vote to opportunity to vote for mayor and alderperson on a nonpartisan basis. Because I thought that they were the ones that had to initiate that process, which is potentially quite wrong. I don't know.
Right. Well, unfortunately, the whole ballot question in code is really very vague. So you're correct in that. I mean, there has been some thought that the city council could create it themselves. So I understand what you're saying, that you're kind of recommending that the city council take it upon themselves. But that then precludes registered voters from saying they want to do it.
How about if we just say the city residents shall by ballot determine if Annapolis municipal election should be held on a nonpartisan basis?
Does that work?
My only problem with this is that this is not a code change. This is a charter change. And if the charter tells the city council that it has to do something, then I'm guessing they have to do it. And it doesn't preclude citizens from, running their own campaign to get the same thing done. But this is a charter thing. This is a directive, and it, by rule, has to be done, unless, of course, the city council votes not to do it. But
Yeah.
so, I mean, we're really saying we're changing the charter. You guys have to do this.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm confused about is if with what you're saying is you're putting this in the charter, and what you're saying, I thought it will go in the charter if the people through a ballot proposal decide to do it. But you're saying this position is what you would actually put in the charter?
I'm saying that it is we're going to change the charter and direct the city council to do whatever, take whatever actions are necessary to ensure that this question appears on a ballot.
I'm going to defer. I see Mike's got his hand up. I'd like to hear what he thinks.
Yes, Mike.
Okay, so here, because this is a charter recommendation, you cannot push off onto the council something for future action. That should come in the way of a recommendation. We recommend that the charter include a provision for nonpartisan elections. We recommend, in order to get to that point, that the city engage in a referendum with the public. But that would not be in the charter. That's just an outside recommendation as part of your report. In the charter states what is. This particular provision states what's going to happen at some future date, leaving it to some vote and some council off in the future, and the charter cannot do that.
See, I'm not prepared to say that we're going to put nonpartisan elections into the charter.
And that's why I suggest a recommendation. So
Yeah.
as an example, you could say the Charter Review Commission recommends strongly, if you will, that nonpartisan elections be made a part of the charter, or the charter change to reflect a nonpartisan election. How you get there, we're agnostic, but we know that in the past, referenda seem to be a way to get there. But the council doesn't have to do a referendum. And in the state of Maryland, a referendum doesn't mean much. A council can do a referendum, can listen to it or not listen to it. The council, under the charter as established, and as you are about to offer changes, can go forward with a nonpartisan election if it so desires. And it can change the charter if it so desires to have nonpartisan elections. So in my view, it seems to be what you are saying is you are recommending as a position that the city go in this direction and leave it up to the city council to get there.
Okay, can we, are there any contrary views? Rob? I didn't mean to imply you have a contrary view. You had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily have a contrary view, but I like what Mr. Lyles has suggested, and I think that and Paul, chime in if you think I'm off base. I think, you know, we approach this as we really don't want to recommend anything regarding about nonpartisan elections being put into the charter, because we recognize this has been like a contentious issue, and it's already been put in the Charter Review Commission's reports before and have essentially been ignored, more or less, I feel like, by the city council. But rather, we're trying to push the city council and encourage them or recommend to them that this really needs to be a ballot question at this point, that they do need to put this on the ballot as a charter amendment as to whether or not we're going to have nonpartisan elections, I think is, and I like the concept of recommending that we're recommending to the city council that they put this charter amendment for nonpartisan elections up as, you know, put it up as a ballot referendum.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Paul, I'm good with that.
can we
Yep, good here.
Can we restate that just so, and I just think it's the first, I'm looking at the first 6 or 7 words of that, position number 7. It really is, we are recommending that the city council will propose.
Will conduct.
Will conduct is a better word, because you don't want to give somebody an out. Will conduct a, can we use the word referendum?
You may.
Okay, a referendum.
Can you use that, Mike, or does it have to be ballot question? Because that's what's in the code.
Conduct a ballot question.
Impose a ballot question, I think. It can, the council itself, I think, approves a ballot question.
Yeah. Okay, well, then say it that way. We recommend that the council approve a ballot question.
And that's good, because the way it currently reads, then they can either, it may be that they can either do it themselves independently, or then citizens could take it up if they wanted to. Because they have to ultimately approve it, even if citizens
Okay.
put it forth.
Can we have Eileen, possibly a reread of the
Go ahead.
proposal?
We are recommending that the city council approve a ballot question to put nonpartisan elections in the charter. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that works for me at least.
Yep.
Any dissent?
Give them a date deadline for that.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Within,
Pick a date, Eileen.
next week.
Oh,
You're right, September 5th.
well, the realities of it are that it may be 4 years unless one of our later positions of syncing it in with the presidential election goes through.
You can say no later than next general election, which means the city council, if they take it up, because if you're going to do it so that it's nonpartisan prior to the general election in 4 years, the council would have to put a ballot before the citizens in some kind of special process at least 2 years prior to the general election to give them time to get everything, the mechanism set up. So, but if you say the latest, then at least they have to, if they agree with your recommendation, would have to put the ballot question along with the other general election topics, including the politicians who are running.
Right. Okay, so right now we are recommending that the city council approve a ballot question to put nonpartisan elections in the charter no later than the next general election. Seems a little choppy, but I could try to.
That's pretty darn
Okay.
good, though. We can
Okay,
clean it
Yeah.
up.
so
I
that's
was gonna
enough.
say,
to
yeah,
edit it.
instead of in the charter to maybe say a charter amendment or something like that.
Okay, approve a ballot question.
Yes, charter amendment sounds good, yeah.
Okay, I can change that. All right, I'll send it out.
Any disagreement? Hearing
you.
none, hearing none. Position 6 passes. I'm sorry, that was position 7. I'm sorry, that was position 7, Eileen. So we're on to position 8, which may be subject to the exact same initial wording.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
this is the alignment of dates.
Yeah, I would recommend that we just do the wording exactly like we just did with the,
Exactly.
So we are,
Well, let me ask a question. Why would you put this in front of the citizens? Technically, the citizens don't care. This is an administrative change that benefits the citizens, but more so the administration from a procedural and efficiency standpoint. But the citizens don't care. We know that they vote more during presidential elections. They vote less in off-year elections. Putting it before, if you really want the change, maybe you just suggest or recommend that the charter change to reflect the change, as opposed to doing the additional step of having the citizens vote when the citizens don't really care. You know, you're having them vote. Basically, you're having them vote for something that changes the date, but they're going to vote on it on a date when they really don't come out to vote.
And this can be done, Mike, in the same manner as we just proposed before. It's a city council. Or no, actually, this is a slightly different thing, right?
Yes, the city council can approve. If they approve your recommendation, they can just do it in the charter and it's done.
right,
Wouldn't
could they
that
just
make-
make a charter amendment?
Yeah, I don't even know why that's why I'm asking what the additional step is for putting it in front of the citizens.
I
I mean, that
think
makes
the
sense to
thought,
me.
Oh.
Doesn't that speed it up?
right, I think the thought may have been is that in the past, it's been avoided because the city council members defer deciding if they either get an extra year of their term or they cut their term. So maybe what we need to do is stipulate when that would start. Would it start in 2024 or would it start in, 20? Well, it would have to say you'd start it in 2024.
And
Would-
if you give them an extra period of time to the term, you would be doing it, and they could, kind of say the charter commission recommended it, and we don't really have anything to say about it. But
Right.
once it's done, it's done. The fact that you go round and round about it, makes it difficult to do it because the council doesn't want to do it because of those reasons you just
Right.
stated. If you just suggest it, let them get the benefit of it personally, but they feel that they're not making a choice, they should be fine passing it, because we know that there is a a structural benefit to all the dates aligning.
Right. But the 2024 would actually cut their term by a year as opposed to 2028. And if you give them 2028, you could still have an election in the regular municipal election in 2025. And then they would just know that anybody running in 2025 would have a shorter term. See, that's where it gets sticky.
I like the 2028 idea, and
Yeah,
even though it's longer,
I do too.
it gives everybody, I think they'll ignore it if it's short, and
Yeah,
but this
yeah.
way they'll be able to give themselves that time to talk about it and do the right thing, even though it cuts the next council person's term by a year, because it may not be them.
Okay, could we have a reread of where this stands? And we'll start with the we recommend.
So we are recommending that Annapolis municipal elections will be held. I'd have to play with it. Hold on.
Aligned with the dates of federal presidential primary and general elections starting in 2028.
And take out the ballot proposal.
Do
Yeah,
I hear agreement on that?
Okay.
language?
okay.
Okay. Any dissent?
I hear what Mr. Wiles is saying about it not being a ballot question, and I understand that position. However, there's two ways to get charter amendments passed. It's either to rely on the council or rely on the voters. And this is something that I actually believe should be left up to the voters personally. I don't trust the council to do election reform. I just don't trust them to do it because politicians rarely want to reform a system in which they've been elected under, right? So I think it's extremely hard to convince elected officials to amend their own system that's currently benefiting them. So that's why I would still support having it be that we're recommending a charter amendment be placed on the ballot at the 2000 and what would it be
25?
2005
25.
election 2025 election, and that it would take and that we would switch over to voting on the presidential cycle in 2028. But it sounds like I'm probably the minority in the group, so
No.
I'm just gonna
not-
kind of plead my case, and if anyone wants to
Not at
join
all.
me, I would appreciate it.
Any comments on Rob's position?
I would, this is Paul, I mean, if first, just legally, is Rob correct?
As far as what part of the statement?
That we can put a mandatory ballot proposal in the charter?
I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I'm
this
not
is what-
recommending that, but
Yeah, this is
I'm
just
sorry.
a recommendation like the other recommendation.
exactly.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's what I heard. So I didn't have a problem with the way he stated it.
Right. But you're saying, but what I have written now is we are recommending that the Annapolis municipal elections be aligned with the federal presidential primary and general elections beginning in 2028. If I'm hearing Rob, he prefers it still become a ballot question that then would be presented in 2024.
2025.
No, because
Oh, the ballot question would be 2024?
the earliest you could have the ballot question at this point rate would be 2024 with the next municipal elections.
No, the municipal elections are 25.
Could be
I'm
25.
sorry, 25. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry.
And then it would take effect if it passed in 28. I don't see any harm in what Rob is saying.
it's the same, it would be the same result, but a different path to get there.
And it
Unless-
does put it in
Right.
front of citizens,
Right.
but I mean, Rob is right about that.
Unless the citizens say, no, they don't want it.
Yeah, and that's,
Yeah.
okay, let's work on Rob's proposal and then we'll come back to this. And then I think we're almost done. Any dissent on Rob's proposal?
No, I agree.
Hearing none, we're going to adopt Rob's proposal. Now let's go back to position 8, which would be Eileen's language with Rob's proposal.
All right, so we are recommending that the city council approve a ballot question to align the federal presidential, no, I'm sorry. We are recommending that the city council approve a ballot question to put the Annapolis municipal elections in alignment with the federal presidential elections beginning in 2028.
Not quite perfect, but darn close, and we can fix it. Yeah, it
Yep.
has all the right points in it.
Okay. So I'm going to take position 8 as being adopted. Mike, you have your hand up. Did you want to? Oh, hand went down. Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
Position 9. A review process will be established to ensure compliance with applicable state and local legal requirements. And this would be relevant to elections, election provisions.
I think that's this, Paul. I think that the phrasing of this is very vague. I don't understand it, actually. So we're saying a review process shall be established, a review process undertaken by the council, I'm assuming? So we have to say who's doing the review. So the charter is going to mandate a review, that the city council review the charter to ensure regularly to ensure compliance with applicable state and local.
This is another recommendation.
Yeah.
Not a charter amendment.
Yeah, it is.
And
Would-
this,
Would I, go ahead, I'm sorry, Mike.
this is a little, I need some more explanation on this one because this is already done every time we do an election. However, the local government has broad authority to run an election how it wants to run it. And there are very few state requirements other than those related to ethics and campaign contributions and general illegality when it comes to elections. But that said, there are no legal requirements at the state, really. So we have a lot of autonomy that and we do because I run it out of my office, so that's why I'm speaking about it. So we do this as the elections come around. We determine with our partners who have elections. We enter a contract with the county. We try to facilitate the election process the way the county does it. And we are more alike in the state process and the county process just because it's efficient to do it that way. And they have systems set up to help us conduct the elections. But that's generally how it's done. Less about compliance than it is about efficiency and coordination and getting assistance from our state and county partners.
I mean, did we have evidence that there were issues about this topic? Or concerns?
I think I had advocated for this one, and that was because we had heard some things like that some of the city's processes, like just on paper, did not necessarily align with like what was, written down someplace. I think, as we've gone through this process, I'm not so sure if that's necessarily the case anymore. So, I mean, I would be happy to withdraw this position actually, if people feel comfortable with that. I think it was just, we had heard some of these things through some of our interviews and, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Do I hear?
Can
Do
I,
I hear
I
any?
just want to say something. Rob, were
Well-
you trying to assess that that election law needed to be updated?
I mean, yeah, or just to make sure, because like processes had changed apparently, right? Where the city had been running it and they were running it through through their method. And then all of a sudden the county came in and started administering it, right? And they have different, machines and different processes possibly for it. So it was just to kind of like to ensure that, whatever processes the city had written down on paper, are aligned with how the county is now administering it.
Well, no, that's not true. The city runs this entire election. We have a contract with the county because they buy election materials, equipment that would cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy. But when it comes to administering the election, the Board of Supervisors of Elections, as well as the city clerk and her staff, manage the whole thing, right? We hire election judges, we train election judges, we put up the boxes, we print the ballots, we put out ads, we manage the primaries. People come and do their campaign reports here. People can register here in our office. So the county just helps us with facilitating the machinery, the mechanics, if you will. We got boxes from the state. We didn't have to pay top dollar for those. We get machines from the county. We don't have to pay like a new provider. So a lot of those things and just kind of economies of scale. They help us print. We go to the printer that the county goes to. So it's their contract, but we're making sure that whatever is printed is in accordance with our expectations.
Are you good with pulling it, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's just pull it and go on.
Okay, fair enough. So position 9 is rejected. Going on to my second page. This will be the first time we're talking about powers, which is Article 3. This will be the first time you've come across this notion that I have of clarification. So the proposal was to revise sections 1 and 2 to provide clarity and more precisely define city powers. Well, not only do we want to improve clarity, we need clarity in the proposal. So I wasn't sure what we were proposing with this particular one.
I'm with you. I don't understand this one because it's not a.
So we're talking about Article 3. It's not on the screen right now, but.
Is it this? Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I worked on this. The issue here is that the way this is organized is just it's a huge list of just a bunch of stuff, a lot of which has no relevance in 2021. And, Rockville and Hagerstown and others have organized this in an alphabetical order that makes sense and talks about things that are relevant. So this needs a thorough review, legal and functional, to say what are the stuff in this like mishmash of powers is relevant today. And then, I had also added some articles from other charters that talked about, the city's ability to enforce the powers. And so I just think it needs somebody to take a look at this from a legal and functional perspective and say, okay, this is like 200 years old. And, we could like say we want to keep stuff in there because it's cute, but anyone reading it would say like, what are we talking about here?
This Paul, wouldn't this best go back up in our in the section, the earlier section where we were saying that the whole darn thing needs to be rewritten. And
Yeah, that's what was part of my recommendations, is this whole
Okay.
section needs to be rewritten.
yeah, I think that's the proposal. I think
Okay.
that's what's really what we're getting at here is that, you know, this is just another great example of why the thing needs to be rewritten, you know, get rid of gaugers and wood quarters. And looking at
Right.
it now.
Now, Paul and Ron, if I could just at least summarize where we are on this particular one. Paul, what you were saying is we're going to have a section in the executive summary, and I'll just call that because I can't think of a better word right now. But we're going to have a section in this summary that will point to an appendix, and inside the appendix, we're going to have a lot of recommendations, kind of a catch-all. What you're recommending is let's move that to that part. So this just happens to be one more thing that needs to be cleaned up. So this is not a specific recommendation that's going to sit in this part of the report, but it's going to wind up in that detailed appendix that we were proposing. Did I?
I don't want to put words in in Ron's mouth because it's his proposal. But yeah, I think that's I mean, I think we have to see it, but I think what I'm trying to say is, and I think Ron agreed, was this is just one more perfect example of why the entire charter needs to be rewritten, and where that goes. It's not a proposal to change the charter. It's a proposal to it's evidence that the charter needs to be rewritten entirely. So
Okay.
where that goes, I don't really care. I don't know if you do, Ron, or what.
No, I don't care. I mean, if you want to have a proposal that's section 3 powers, because I think it's important that it be clarified. And I think it's important that, you know, it's relevant. I think it's important that it has a statement about how the city can enforce the powers of what it has. And I think it needs to be, when you read it right now, you read it and you get, well, like, there's a lot of things in there that the city probably should be able to do, but it's not in there. And so I think it needs a total rewrite from a functional and a legal perspective, and clarifies the city's authority to enforce those powers and what happens if somebody violates those powers. So yeah, no, I mean, long story, but I agree.
Yeah. I just don't want to lose the idea, and I'm afraid that you know, unless, you know, and I'm going to go back to the preceding page of this, unless the proposal is what is down on the bottom of this page right now, the city council, yada yada, and for all the rest of that, if that's the proposal. I was trying to capture this into a particular position that this, as a commission, we're planning to take.
I mean, my view is that it is outdated.
Yeah.
Much of it is irrelevant. It is unclear and you know, who knows if any citizens actually ever read the charter, but if you were to read the section on powers, you would go, I don't know what the city can and can't do. So from a functional, from all of the elements of the city government and from a legal perspective, somebody needs to look at it and say what's relevant and what's not relevant, and how do we enforce it? And then if somebody violates it, what do we do? And then we have 4 or 5, 6 pages about sewage and water, which are all important to us, but probably they detract from the gravitas of the whole charter by diving down into details that should better be in regulations and code and other kind of enforcement stuff.
Okay.
So Ron, this is Paul again, just to try and clarify. So I think we're in agreement, you and I, on this, in terms of the fact that some professionals need to sit down when this is, if the county council or city council agrees to rewrite the entire darn thing, they're going to hire, a professional staff, probably either use Mike or legal counsel to advise them and redraft the whole darn thing. And this section is Exhibit A about what needs to be done.
Exactly.
So the only thing
Okay.
we're talking about is where this appears in our report.
Okay, well,
Right, yeah.
if I could move, and I'm trying to keep my eye on the clock because we only have 45 minutes left of Paul. And I want to say, and we're only on the beginning of page 2. Really what we're going to do, what we've agreed to do, and I would like to see if we have any dissent on this, but what we've agreed to do is keep this concept, but we'll find a home for it in that overarching thing that says that this thing needs to be rewritten.
And offer some of Ron's examples, yes.
Right. And so I would say, Hagerstown, Rockville, other places have at least organized it in a manner that most sentient people could like walk down it and understand it. And this is just a mishmash of
Okay.
stuff. So yeah.
Okay. Do I hear any dissent on this, on that particular notion, that idea? Hearing none. Now, this is going to be tricky, Eileen, because I'm calling these clarifications. This becomes a position. So we're taking a position.
Okay,
Well-
I have it written.
We'll include this. So moving on, and I'm going to try to pick up the pace if I can, on the city council. And I may not have done justice to how these have been slotted into this particular pages, because we're going to hit the Article 5, which is the mayor, next. So if I've not slotted this properly, apologies. So I'll take each position as we slide down this. Alderman, alderwoman may not direct the work of mayor, city manager, department director, employee department, or office that reports to the mayor or city manager, or any board, commission, committee established pursuant to this charter. This is essentially, I guess, for lack of a better word, this is kind of line of control or line of authority.
Well, what it did is it adds, it's the existing charter, but it adds and makes it more specific and identifies the mayor, the city manager, a department director, an employee of a department or office that reports to the mayor. So I guess in the copy I had sent it was highlighted. So I just want to let people know that it's really an addition to the existing code. And it was brought about because of many of the outreach interviews that we heard that there was confusion, and that particularly some department heads felt that they reported to the mayor or the city manager, but yet there might be city members that were directing them as opposed to just communicating with them. So that's where it came from.
Okay. Any supporting views on this? Mike, I'll get to you in a second.
Oh, I support this. I'd be interested if the board, commission, or committee issue is any big deal, and maybe that has to be refined, but I like the proposal.
Okay. Mike, you
Yeah,
go ahead.
let me be a little less politically correct. There's no
Please.
confusion. The council members refuse to abide by it. So there's no confusion. The department people are confused only because it's a law, but the aldermen and alderpersons refuse to, abide by it. So I think this is well placed. It's fine. As strongly as this can be worded, the better. But
Mike, may I ask a question? Is this
Sure.
then redundant? If there's an existing framework in place that they shouldn't do this, but they're doing it anyway?
Well, I think that in this particular, I was looking up the code section because I don't have the current wording in front of me. I think you're adding mayor, city manager here to this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Where because
That
mayor
is
and city, right, mayor and city manager aren't listed directly in here.
Right.
you
There's
know,
some additional language, Mike, like it just specifies a little bit more, and it does include board commissions and committees, which is not in the charter currently.
Yes, and I agree with all of that. And it's just training, and we try to do the training here in the office about this particular provision because it does get us in trouble. And I will say this about the charter: we run into this with council members who, in the same vein, don't understand how government that is split works. We have a legislative branch and we have an executive branch. And that's called separation of powers. But when I speak to certain council members, they don't agree with that concept, even though that's the structure of our city and government. But that's the principle where you have a legislative branch that does legislative things and they do not do executive things. So to the extent that whenever you are reforming the charter, you can make it clear that that is the form of government we have. And we call it a mayor, city council, strong mayor, city manager form of government. But the separation of powers, they say to me, well, separation of powers isn't in the charter. And I have to say to them, the fact that there's a section called legislative and a section called executive and different functions for each means that those powers are separated. The reason those powers are separated is because we would find it abhorrent every time the city got sued, city council members would have to go and testify about something, right? You don't want that. And so the executives are imbued with power and authority to go run and carry out what the legislature identifies. But legislatives have a lot of immunity from the kinds of trouble, lawsuits, entanglements that executives get into. And so that's why there's that separation. Plus, we want to insulate the legislative from the things that might happen in the executive responsibility, right?
You know, so therein lies the issue with the mayor being in both camps. But
that is an issue, but here's how I think of it. That when he's on that council, he is a legislator. When he comes off of that council, he is a mayor. And it is a hybrid form. I've never seen it until I got to Annapolis, but I think the mayor knows that he is not insulated in the way that the other legislators are insulated. And he's aware of that because in order for someone to sue the city, they have to sue the mayor because the city cannot be sued in its own name, right?
Yeah, so I think the nuance is lost on some people, but the more we can clarify the separation of legislative and executive is important.
Yes.
Because we heard from people that in the outreach that were concerned about council persons telling the head of public works to go do something.
Yes, and we advise them not to do that because for the same reason that if public works employee goes out and does something and we get sued for this all the time, does something wrong in the minds of a plaintiff, you don't want the council person to have to appear on the witness stand and say, I told them to do something. That you don't want that. In a 10-week trial, for instance, you want all your council people in trial. You got to have them legislated. So they don't understand that because they've been insulated. But the moment they're not insulated, they would relish being back in the position of separating those powers.
Mike, do you think
any
we
other
should do
discussion on
something-
this?
Well,
Any other-
I just want to ask Mike, do you think we need to do more than this or is this enough?
I think it's enough with our training, but if you wanted to add language that called out specifically, the government has a principle of separation of powers. I don't know how you would phrase it, but the powers are separated, or are applied in our city context. I don't know how you would say it because it's always implied, but I get pushback just because the words aren't there. It's like that's not how government works, right? The only one thing, because I do have to break off, I agree with everything else in all the positions, except for the one, the city council provide codification or recodification of the ordinances of the city in bound or loose leaf form. That's already done. So I'm not sure why that's there, because we keep those bound copies in my office, you know. But nobody does those really anymore because they cost us thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yes. And Mike, before you break off, one other thing, and Rob, I did see your hand go up. I'll come to you in a second. There is one other thing that Jacqueline told us is redundant in the code. When we get into the finance section, the issue of an audit.
Yes, that's true.
She advised the audit, there already is an audit done. So
Yeah, that's true.
That's redundant.
Yeah, but there is a difference between the code and the charter. The thing that you're correcting that I appreciate and think is a good deal is you're making a necessary for a supermajority to change the charter. Right now, it requires the same vote to change the charter as it does the code. And so
Yes.
even though it's in the code, it can be easily withdrawn from the code. So having something in the charter that says there's an audit with the supermajority gives it more import and more distance from the ability of any city council in the future to say, we don't need an audit.
Okay.
So I see the benefit of it being in the charter if that's where you want it.
If you could hold on, I know you've got to run, but if you could hold, because position 11, 12, and 13 are going to go into that quorum and supermajority. But Rob had a point, and then hopefully we'll move off of position 10.
I was just, I think Mr. Lyles kind of alluded to this, or maybe he can respond to this as well. I was of the opinion that this was more of an issue of kind of like that what constitutes directing work is an issue. Is that accurate? That it's more of like, how do you define that directing work aspect? And so I'd just be curious, whoever worked on this, why you chose this method as opposed to maybe trying to redefine what directing work means.
Everybody knows what it means. They know what it means. You get a call to say, go fix Miss Johnson's sidewalk. Everybody know this is, if any council member tells you they don't know what this means, they're not being true to the, this is the problem. There is only a chain of command. The people that do the hiring in the city are the hiring authority under the charter. The mayor has hiring authority, city manager has hiring authority, and then department heads have hiring authority. That's where your direction comes from. What council members try to do is circumvent their way of directing. The way to direct things is to get in a council meeting and to vote, city manager, mayor, do that through either an ordinance or a resolution. And that's the only way to do it as a council member. And, everything else is maybe a suggestion to the city manager, mayor, hey, we've got these potholes, like any citizen would do. We've got these potholes. The other way that they do it is through committees, commissions, and boards by assigning and delegating that authority to those commissions and boards, which do have some implementation authority and implementation power. So we could get into, making this very clear, but they know what it is, and they just need more training. They need everybody to agree that they just can't do it in the way that has been done in the past.
Yeah, but the issue is that votes equal, I call my alderperson and say, hey, this is an issue in my neighborhood, and it gets fixed.
Right. So what we're talking about is not direction necessarily for the city manager, the mayor, because I've been on the city council before and I've had these issues. And so if I had a pothole, I would call the city manager and say, hey, Mr. City Manager, there's a pothole on 214. We really like that. I'm an advocate. We'd really like that fixed, right? He can fix it or not, but I'm just saying we really like that fixed. If I need to escalate it, I go to the city council and say, we need to pass an ordinance that, or resolution that something needs to get fixed. Generally, things got fixed, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a city council member calling a person way down in the chain and asking them to do stuff. See, because city managers and mayors know how to deal with those requests, right?
Yeah.
In a way it doesn't upset anything. But when you get to a person that's way down on the chain of command, maybe even a street worker, a person who paves the streets, or a police officer who's got 4 levels above him or her, that's the kind of interaction we're trying to, push back on. And that's the thing that's causing the concern, because most city managers and mayors hear from council people all day, fix that, do that. And we just politically do it and don't feel any way about it.
Yeah, but so the city charter was written hundreds of years ago, and not in the information age now, where every council person reaches out to all their constituency on a daily basis and tells them everything that's going on and says, hey, if you have any concerns, like email me, text me, whatever.
Right.
So I don't know how in the charter we mitigate that, but there's a inherent benefit to council persons to respond instantly, if that even means diving down into 3 or 4 or 5 levels in the city government services organization to get stuff done, because it means votes.
Okay,
Well,
if I could, because we, again, I'm focused on 32 minutes from now. And I don't want to risk losing a quorum. Can I have, is there any more discussion that might move the dial on position 10?
I move that we adopt this position. as
Okay,
written.
so moved. Let me go. I want to talk about position 11 and 12, because Eileen, I think they're similar. Matter of fact, they're roughly the same thing. But this was just cutting and pasting from a whole set of emails that we've had.
Well, I realize that they're actually different. I was focused on quorum before, but
Yeah.
quorum, having it in the charter is typical, and it's, kind of standard in most of the charters. What I realized, what I was trying to attempt through quorum is actually about votes. And that's why the next position talks about how many votes you need to pass things. So one of the challenges in the past has been with things like charter amendments in particular, have been passed with as few as 3 votes. Because unless you identify it, for instance, if you have 5 people at a city council meeting, that's quorum. And if you do a majority of those 5, that's 3. Well, is that really what we want? Or do we really want to see, for a charter amendment, it should be more of a supermajority, like 7 people?
Well, I see this as really 2 different things, because position 11 essentially says a majority of city council members must be present. That's the end of the thought, in my view, when you look at how
See,
the
I think
quorum is
I think what you did, Andy, is you didn't replace my more current proposals with my old ones. So
Well, I
I
think
don't
you're
have
more-
to find majority. So my proposals are just the quorum and then the position on the votes. I don't have one on a supermajority because it's already included in votes.
Yeah, I think position 12 was the one that you sent later. So that's why I was saying position 11 and 12 are there's somewhat of an overlap. But position 11, and I hate to make this confusing, 11 and 13 are definitional.
Right, but they were meant to be taken out. I was meant to replace.
Oh, I didn't see that. I
Right.
didn't see that.
So the proposal that I'm putting forth is that quorum be defined as a majority of council members, 5, must be present at legislative sessions or meetings in order to conduct business. And then the second proposal is on votes, which it's actually 2-pronged. It's no ordinances shall be passed without an affirmative vote of no less than 5 members of city council. And no charter amendment shall be passed without an affirmative vote of no less than 7 members of city council.
Okay. And so and again, I hate to jump around, but on position 13, you don't even want to elevate, or your proposal is not to elevate supermajority into a definition.
No, because
Even
that was replaced. That was meant to be replaced.
I'm talking about definition now.
No, it wasn't meant. When I submitted these changes, they were meant to replace that. So I don't have a supermajority proposal. I'm not proposing a supermajority.
You're not proposing a super majority definition, so position
Definition,
13
correct.
goes away, correct?
Right,
So-
correct.
So 13. Now, again, jumping around. So any disagreement on removing position 13 as a definition?
No, as long as 11 and 12 are adopted as one.
Okay. Paul, was that a disagreement?
Nope, that's an agreement.
Okay, so it's agreement. Okay, so position 13 is gone, has been turned down. So we're going to focus on 11 and 12 now. And 11 represents the quorum. Is that definition? Any comments on that definition?
I like it. It makes them
Okay.
all
None
be
here.
there.
Yeah, I do too.
Any dissent? So we will pass position 11. Position 12 deals with the vote. And again, I'm not sure whether I got the latest language that Eileen wants. And if Eileen, you want to amend that, if you could just share what your amendment might be.
It says no ordinance shall be passed without an affirmative vote of no less than 5 members of the city council.
Right.
I have an issue, this is Jeff, with the second bullet, the 7 members. And to me, that just seems, that's beyond a supermajority. To me, that, you know, if you get above 2/3, which again, in my mind was 6, and I know we might be splitting hairs between 6 and 7, but getting 7 members aligned out of 9 is a tall order.
I
Nothing will
mean,
get-
I would just say that they pass charter amendments willy-nilly, so.
I agree.
I'm better on more than less.
Yeah, this is dealing with just charter amendments.
No, I understand. I understand. I just think that, well, to your point, Ron, it seems that they're adept at it, but at the same time, I think they're adept at it when it's clearly aligns with the entire council. I wonder about an amendment where there's some dissent, and if all you need is 3 people to dissent, it just seems strong. But that's, I could be swayed. I'm not digging in here.
Can I just offer maybe a slight parenthetic? The U.S. Constitution requires 3/4. It actually requires 2/3 of the Senate, but 3/4 of the states. And I just did some quick math, and 7 nights is roughly 3/4. It's a little bit off 3/4. And I think, you know, when you look at the value, I mean, in the United States, we screwed up a few times and put amendments on the books that are wrong. And we've had to, you know, the 18th and the 21st Amendment, the 21st had to nullify the 18th. So we can make a mistake, but the United States at least the United States Constitution tries to have a fairly steady ship. And I think, you know, I look at the second bullet, and it should be serious when a charter amendment is going to be proposed. And I know we've discussed this in past meetings about the likelihood, or not the likelihood, but the probability, the low probability of eliminating the mayor's office through a charter amendment. That's should be a fairly serious decision to make. And so as such, you know, I would support the 7, I would support it as proposed, that 7 members should be required to amend the charter.
This is Paul. I favor 7 as well. I just, you know, the most everything could be fixed through the code if really, really necessary. But I rightly or wrongly, I guess I viewed the charter as a little more inviolable than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of maybe the executive summary is that like differentiate the gravitas of the charter versus the code and regulations and all that kind of stuff. This is not something that you just like change willy-nilly, I think. So I agree.
That's in there. That's in the section you asked to move out.
Okay.
That's there. I'll send you a copy of the current draft, but we've
Okay,
already
thank you.
decided we'll have a very tight executive summary. Okay, any further comments on position 12?
This is
Do I
Paul
hear-
again. The
I
only
hear-
comment, this is Paul, the only comment I would have is that if we adopt these, I would suggest we look at the no ordinance shall be passed without an affirmative vote of no less than. Just from a wording perspective, I think we would turn it into a positive thing. Ordinance must be passed with an affirmative vote of not less
Right.
than. But that's
Okay.
just
Okay.
phrasing.
Yeah, we can polish this at a later point.
Yeah.
Any further comments, positive or negative? Do I hear a position to accept position 12?
11 too.
Yes, I thought we did 11.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, 11 and 12? So passed. Let's go
Good
to
here.
14. Let's go to 14. Delineate legislative procedure and include in the charter. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, this was a victim of cutting and pasting, so I apologize. I believe this particular position was trying to find more clarity between how, the introduction and the process of how amendments and changes happen.
Yeah, it was meant to, for instance, many charters have the actual legislative procedure in the charter. Part of it is so that it can't be changed as readily.
Mhm.
So our charter does not have it in there. And so there are things that happen in code, for instance, that, somebody at a city council meeting can just put out an amendment and it can be verbal and not written, or it can extend for quite a long time. Many charters have a 90-day limit. If it's not passed in 90 days, it dies and
Mhm.
needs to be resurfaced. So this was an attempt to say, you need to have the legislative procedure in your charter.
Yeah, I think that was one of the comments from Ward 1, from Ellie.
Right, Ellie did talk about that.
Yeah.
Because what happens is all these ordinances keep going back and back. So you're actually creating an ordinance to approve an ordinance where it really should be I think it should be emanating out of the charter.
Right.
And it would certainly be something that would go with restructuring.
This is Paul. I was just going to say that I appreciate and actually agree that that's the case, or should be the case, that a legislative procedure is worthwhile to have in the charter. I don't know how that this proposal can be refined to say that, to be meaningful. In other words, if we adopted this, you'd literally have to put someplace in the charter these words, and that just
Well, I
doesn't
think you
work.
can make it, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, maybe this is something that we should include in the broader section where we want this whole thing rewritten. And here's just one more reason, because every other charter we ever looked at has legislative procedures in them, which should be, reviewed, refined, and placed in the next new charter.
I guess I just think it will have a little bit more weight if it's put in as a recommendation, similar to what we're doing with some of the others, like the elections, and point it out.
Can I propose just to, and I know, Paul, you have to drop off soon,
I'm good.
but can I propose that we agree to position 14 in principle, and that over the next day or two or three, that we figure out and slot into the draft that you're going to read what that might be?
I would prefer that it be voted on now. Either it's put in as a recommendation.
Okay,
I mean, I prefer being a recommendation because I think unless it's pointed out, it'll get lost in a summary or a preamble. That's just my personal.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
okay, so what will be, are we just agreeing to delineate the legislative procedure?
Well, I think we just put in it, we can make it a recommendation, recommend.
Yeah, we recommend
Legislative
that.
procedure be included in the charter, be delineated and included in the charter.
Without explaining what that is.
Yeah. I'll give my, again, and I apologize, but this way I feel. I just don't see that being the same as a recommendation.
Right.
The other recommendations, like no ordinance shall be passed without an affirmative vote of less than 5 members. That's a real piece of guidance.
Yeah.
Whereas delineate legislative procedures is more obtuse.
Mhm.
And I happen to agree with this, but I just don't agree where we put it.
Mhm. Would it
I
be better?
would second that by saying, and agree with you, Paul, that it's just too loose. It's just not definitive enough. What I'd like to do, given the hour right now is, and because there's a difference of view on this, maybe put this up to a vote. Maybe ask all those in favor, raise your hand.
Well, I can rephrase it, but
Well, I don't know we really have the time right now.
all right.
Okay. So we've got Eileen, Rob,
Well, I think there needs to
Jeff.
be something in here that says this stuff's not going to drag on for a year. So, yeah, I mean, we got input from alderpersons and other people on let's make a decision up or down, or kill it. So,
So Ron, you're asking about the specifics.
yeah.
And I agree, but there's a lot of specifics that really need to go into the legislative procedure. My goal was just to say, recommend legislative procedure be included in the charter. So
I agree.
Okay. And those that agree, I saw Rob's hand up. Can I assume Ron's hand is up?
Yes.
And Eileen's hand is up.
and it looks like
And-
Jeff's is up too.
Yep.
Jeff's is up also.
Yeah,
So,
I think it passed.
so the
Correct.
position passes. Okay.
I'll rephrase it if that's, and put that forth too.
For me, it just sounds too feel good. And it's likely to get dismissed just because of that. And, but anyway, enough said because of the hour. Position 15. And again, I don't know, Eileen, if I did justice to the proposal.
This
that
was
you-
withdrawn. This was to be replaced. I
It is.
withdrew this.
Okay. Any dissent on turning down 15? Okay. 15 does not make it. Okay. Gender neutral pronouns throughout the report. This is in position 16. I think
This
we had
is
an
Article-
agreement
It's Article
move-
4 for the
yeah,
mayor.
to move this into the, whatever we're going to call it, the executive summary, the big or small executive summary. Define the term to mean no longer than, define temporary to mean not longer than 90 calendar
Andy,
days.
Let's go back and take a vote on the other one, make sure I'm okay
Oh,
with it. being
I'm
moved to
sorry.
the
I'm sorry. I
executive
thought yeah, let's take a vote. We had discussed this in the very beginning of moving this, these kinds of recommendations. Any comments on position 16? In favor?
Favor.
Aye.
summary. With it.
Passes. So it gets, we were going to recommend moving it. Position 17, change the term temporary to mean not longer than 90 calendar days.
Eileen,
Any
this is yours.
discussion?
You had context for this, Eileen, right?
Well, I just thought I don't feel that strongly about it, but I thought in reviewing this section that the way it reads is there's no endpoint. I mean, if someone were, incapacitated or for whatever reason, not able to carry out their duties, I'm not saying you change them. It's just, maybe it needs to be hooked in with something else. So I don't feel that strongly about it. It was just kind of a weakness that was identified.
And I thought Ron had brought this up earlier. Maybe I'm wrong, but this was to clarify that when they're, the mayor's incapacitated or something like that. And I think this is a good idea myself.
I mean, you could get into the whole thing in terms of vacancy. That's probably really the area that needs to be addressed more is how do you replace somebody? And it doesn't address that. It was really just trying to say, well, get in again into definitions. Now, one could say we just want to use that as an example in the executive summary, and I could live with that. But I just thought it needed a little teeth.
No, I think it needs to be defined and not vague.
I'd move adoption, Mrs. Paul.
Okay.
Anybody against? We will accept position 17. Let me just back up on this one. This is the clarification. D as in dog, identify the process by which the mayor would be replaced due to resignation. Is this a request to define the process like we've been talking about before?
Well, again, it was really looking at a loophole or looking at there's nothing in the charter that says, what do you do if the mayor drops dead? Or, I'm not trying to set it up that someone's getting impeached or anything like that, but what happens?
Yeah, right.
Well, we have vacancies for how do you replace a city council member? How do you replace a board of supervisor? But we don't have one for how do you replace a mayor?
Yeah.
What if the mayor resigns?
Yeah, that would be more likely, or could be.
So that's where I was, and again, I have to give Minor some credit for this too. That was where it was coming from was, okay, you talk about temporary decisions, but you don't talk about the long-term options.
Okay, again, my concern is the fact that, and I accept the fact that this is a request to define something, but it's very loose. It's very flighty in terms of what are your thoughts in terms of what that process ought to be?
Hey, Eileen, this is Paul. If and I don't know this section perfectly, but if the mayor is incapacitated, if we say the mayor's incapacitated longer than 90 days, then the decision has to be made to do something about it. And couldn't we sort of just put in the same procedure that replacing a city council person would be, or would you go to a special election?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two components to it. It's one, who steps in instantly. I mean, is it the city manager who's not elected? And then, how do you, beyond that, replace the mayor?
Well, the temporary way that it happens is already in code. It already says, how do you, do it on a temporary basis? It doesn't say, let's say the person resigns. Charter currently tells you who the next person is, but it doesn't say after, say, 90 days, what do you do? Now, that also goes to one of the problems with elections that, we haven't addressed, which is, there's controversy how, for instance, you replace a city council member. So currently, if they have less than 15 months to serve, the central committee makes the decision. If they have more than 15 months on their term, then it goes to a special election. Now, the easy thing to do would be, as Paul says, just take what you do for the city council members and do it for the mayor. That would be, kind of a short term, unless the overall thing is changed. But I mean, that would be easy. I mean, I could take that and just apply it for the mayor.
It's like that. Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
I was just saying, is this in regards to like the 90 days that like, is this specifically in regards to what happens, that we're actually creating sort of like a cutoff saying that if the mayor is incapacitated past 90 days, then the suggestion is that you treat it like you would fill any other vacancy, which is on Article 2, Section 7.
Well, that's that's a good question. Is it the same? I mean, there's two ways of approaching it. One is if the temporary situation extends beyond 90 days, what do you do? But what do you do if there's a vacancy created either through death or resignation?
So Article 2, Section 7 actually handles that in the case of a mayor.
I might have missed it. What's it say?
In case of, so this is the following procedure for filling the vacancy shall apply whenever a vacancy shall occur within 15 months or more remaining until general election. Case of death, resignation, the refusal to serve, disqualification of mayor or any alderman, alderwoman, removal out of the city by the mayor, acting mayor shall issue a proclamation directing that a special primary election and a special general election be held to fill the vacancy.
But does that include the mayor? Or I thought it just included the alderpersons.
No, it specifically says like in the case of death, resignation, refusal to serve, disqualification of the mayor or of any alderman, alderwomen.
So it's there. I stand embarrassed because I didn't realize it
Yeah.
included mayor. I thought it was.
Yeah,
just-
but does it say
Can I-
who steps in?
Can I cut the discussion right here, if you don't mind? We are about set to lose a quorum.
No, we're not. We have 5.
We're going to have 4 very soon.
No, we have 6 now. Unless
Oh.
Jeff has left.
Jeff has left. So what I'd like to do, because we're going to lose a quorum, is to at least cut down on this, because otherwise we're going to have to meet again, to finish this,
Okay.
which I'd like to avoid. So, I mean, it's good that we're going into the minutiae, but I don't think we've got the luxury anymore. So on position, this is the clarification. Do we have a decision or should we drop it?
I'd like to put in that it's 90 days. Oh, identify the process. If it's already in there, then we don't need it. I apologize.
Okay, so we'll remove clarification D. Let me go to operations quickly. And I know, Paul, you're going to jump off. I'll try to get through the remainder of this in, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes, if that's okay with you. I know you said you had to leave.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, sorry. Let's try.
Quarter after the hour. Council members shall receive emergency response training from the Office of Emergency Management every 2 years. This was something we talked about at the work session. Do we support this?
This was
Yeah,
Lawrence's
I mean,
position.
absolutely.
Well,
Okay,
I believe it belongs in code. If you're going to start,
that's position 19.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
position 19.
okay, I'm just saying, if you're going to start, if you're going to start putting training into code, then you're going to have to start adding all training. I
Okay,
think it belongs in code. I
okay,
think it's necessary, but it belongs in code, not the charter.
okay,
Agree.
but that's position 19. I'm trying to, let's say, get through 18 first. Yes, Rob?
So is the issue about receiving training or is the issue that they never show up for it?
They never show up.
So do we want to add something that about making this mandatory for them?
You could
Well,
make-
then I think you do it for all training. I mean, you've heard Mike Lyles talk about the difficulties with training with city council members.
Well, I mean, I would argue that some training, though, it's like, I would say for the emergency management stuff, I would think that that's important enough that they all need to show up for it, right? I mean, otherwise it's gonna look like a literal clown show if something happens to Annapolis, right? They're going to be running around. I think when we met with Dwan, Alderman Gay, I think he said something along the lines of, yeah, we don't know where to go. We don't know if we should go to City Hall. We don't know if we should go to the bunker.
That's because he didn't go to the training.
Well, exactly.
That's
So
ridiculous.
the idea is, I mean, I agree with this
So
statement, but I'm just
my-
saying, should we add like a mandatory?
If I could, we're not going to get through.
okay,
Do we agree to position 18?
no. And Andy, I think we do have to go through. I don't want to be rushing through this. I
Well,
think,
we're going to lose a quorum, Eileen.
well, then we might have to meet again, but somewhat the issue may be penalties, and there are penalties in the code. The problem is enforcement. So there's already penalties
Right.
saying that it's a civil misdemeanor. So again, I think we're going down a slippery slope if we take out one specific thing. Now, I'd have to go back into code, but I believe this is in code, and I believe it should stay in code.
I want to stay with position 18. We'll get to 19 in a second. But on position
Council members
18
must attend emergency response training from the OEM every 2 years. The code
Yes.
says if they don't, they get fined.
It's already there.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
then somebody's got to enforce it.
Right. I don't think moving it to the charter is going to change anything. It needs to
Okay.
be enforced.
So on
I
position
agree.
18,
Yeah, I agree.
we are going to reject that. Do I
Yes.
hear a unit? Okay. Position 18 is rejected. Do we go to position 19, which Eileen wants to discuss? Do we even make the recommendation, or we just turn down position 19 also?
Which,
Well, I mean, Lawrence felt strongly about this.
Yeah, correct. But it's in the code, you said.
Well, yeah, but somebody's got to enforce it. So,
so
I mean,
so should we be
maybe
making a
put it in the
resolution?
executive summary or someplace else, but I mean,
I mean, are we really saying that we need to put the penalty or the enforcement in charter? Or do we
No.
need to say something as an
No.
executive summary saying there are many things that are not being followed and they need to be?
yes, to your second point.
Yes, to your second point, which is in
Yeah.
our summary. These are
Okay.
best dealt with in code.
Can we have a position 18A that basically says council members shall follow the provisions sitting in the code, I don't know, or face the consequences, the enforcement consequences of not to, relative to this emergency response training. So in other words, what we're doing is we're just saying, yes, we understand it's in the code, but we want it enforced.
Philip,
Yeah, this is in our summary, so we're taking this out of. it's
Philip.
not Hello? We're taking this out of our formal recommendations and putting it into our general summary. Is that correct?
Do I have agreement on that? Hate to rush you through this, but
Yes,
I agree.
okay,
I
fair
agree.
enough. Okay. Clarification E, this was the matter of the term cybersecurity be included in matters addressed and protected by city personnel. So the point being not clear or my point was not clear what we're recommending here.
This is Paul. I like this. I worked with Lawrence a bit on this. This can be, I can give you the place where this ought to go. I just can't do it right off the top of my head right now. But we can
Okay.
insert the word cybersecurity in a code, in an existing charter provision that would make this a positive recommendation.
Okay, I'd like to propose that we accept Paul's recommendation. Any disagreement?
Nope.
I like
And
that.
I put something in the preamble that talked about physical and electronic security too. So,
Yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So,
And can I just also put in a plug again to keep it narrow? I like starting to use terms like external, internal, because you could get into a whole thing in terms of health-related pandemics, which we haven't put in. So again, I caution when we start teasing out cybersecurity, this, and just maybe talking about internal and external threats. But that's just my little soapbox.
No, it's a good point. And a lot of the stuff we're putting in is content free to start with. I mean, it's just, the definitions just aren't there. Okay.
Well, I think physical and electronic security kind of cover a lot of the stuff,
But we,
including.
what
I
we have in
like-
the preamble may not turn into action. And it isn't.
Right, but
I like Ron's idea, actually. This is Paul again.
Okay.
Let me talk to Lawrence, but this is what we're talking about. And I think Ron probably has phrased it more appropriately.
Okay.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So,
So
I'd like to see it more inclusive.
yeah.
We are going to accept clarification E, subject to a bit of wordsmithing. And we're
by
going to
Ron,
find
yeah.
we're going to
Ron,
find a
just
home for it.
send me a quick note with that on it, would you, when you have time, Ron?
Any
Okay.
disagreement on that?
Thanks.
Hearing none, we passed that. Position 21, finance. I saw this as a formatting change, when Jeff is not on the call now. But we saw this, so can we place this in the executive summary? This is position 21. Any objection? Hearing none, we will accept position 21. We will move that to the executive summary. Position 22 deals with a balanced budget each year. This is a big one, unfortunately. Didn't we once hear that happens, or that is codified somewhere?
The state has a requirement that the state
That's-
budget
right.
is balanced, and I
Right.
I heard
believe
that.
we're required to do so as well. I think we should check on this. My
Okay,
understanding is that, yeah, that we are required to have a balanced budget.
can I, and apologize for rushing everything, but can I take that position 22 will be checked? And if it is a requirement that exists in some external responsibility, that we will not put position 22 in our final report.
Right. So if already required, it will not be included.
Okay,
I agree.
good. So passed. Position 23 is mine. I would personally like to withdraw it. Any objection? This is the one that Jacqueline told us it already is in the code. This is the audit.
Yeah, and she gave us sites as well, so.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Agreement?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so Eileen, position 23 is turned down. We're into personnel now, Article 8. Ensure that future charter revision commissions reflect the citizens of Annapolis by ward. So position 24 is amend the charter, and I think this is that section. Isn't it section 10? Or somewhere, to require future CRC be represented by every ward.
This was Ben in my recommendation, I believe. It doesn't, we didn't recommend it exactly this way, but I believe we were a little more loose. I said where possible or something like that. I believe our recommendation specifically was at least 5.
Right. That, I think,
Mhm.
yes, that's what we talked about.
And I would propose that this read that way, that we would amend the charter to require the future commissions be represented, or that at least 5 wards be represented on every future commission.
Can I, before we vote on position 24, can I draw your attention to position 28, which talks about 2 at-large members? Because I saw them, I didn't bring them together because they were recommended in 2 separate spots. Can I ask whether anybody has, since they're dealing with essentially the construct of the next CRC, can I ask that we bring both 24 and 28 to a vote now? Any objection to
I'm sorry.
including?
I'm not sure what we're looking, I'm sorry, what are we looking at? Or what are we
We're looking
voting on?
at 24, which is CRC is to be represented by every ward.
Well, no, if I may.
20,
Andy, if I could jump in, I'm sorry. But I think the 24 is going to read something like, amend the charter require all future CRCs to be, members of future CRCs represent at least 5 of the city's 8 wards. In addition, the CRC shall include 2 at-large members.
Yeah, and so I'm just thinking about my involvement in this commission was because of my older person, and I didn't actually know about it. So the outreach, maybe needs to be more than just the older persons reaching out to constituents to involve people in this process. Because I think it resulted in, the composition of the commission that we have right now.
Well, and I think going to another part that I don't think we've gotten to, when you talk about reviewing boards and commissions, this would fall under that. I think that's a fairly common problem with boards, commissions, and committees, is that they're not put out to the general public. They just go
Right.
to the council members.
I mean, not that if we put it out to the general public, people would want to volunteer for stuff like this, but at least it needs to be more inclusive. I agree.
It needs to be posted so that if
Yes.
people want to sign up themselves, they can. But what happened this time is all of the aldermen were asked to give it and only 3 people did.
Okay, can I have a restatement of what we are considering here?
Yeah,
And then we can hopefully close this out.
I think I'll try. So you amend the charter to ensure that at least 5 of the city's wards be represented on all future CRCs. In addition, the CRCs shall include at least 2 at-large members, and the opportunity to serve shall be posted. Somebody fill that blank in somehow,
Right.
Good.
Yes,
Okay,
I
do we
agree.
have agreement on that? Any
Yep.
disagreement?
And I can clear that up. Yep.
I don't have disagreement, but I do like the language about, ensuring that the commission reflect the city's population. So if we can work that sort of phraseology into there, I would be in favor. I mean, I'm going to be in favor of it regardless. I would just like us to include that language as well, how number 7 says.
Yeah, I mean, as a goal, I mean, in reality, it would be hard to ensure, but yeah, I think I agree with you. It's kind of like charter, like preamble stuff is like, our objective is to represent the entirety of the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
We
if I
can
could
just
allow, go ahead, Paul.
Eileen can just throw in the word diversity in there, ensure diversity, and then we can include, so our big long sentence will include something in that.
Right. I got it.
Okay, well, any objections? I would like to move that positions 24 and 28, we've agreed to in principle, and with subject to those modifications. No objections? Passed. Position 25, we're almost there. Agree to move the mayor's oath of office to Article 5.
Yep.
I'm just curious, who put that? Oh, that was in miscellaneous? Okay.
It was in
I don't
somebody's email. It was in, I don't think, I didn't write this or make it up.
It might have been Ben. I mean, it was just one of those things where it ought to be there. It's
Yeah.
crazy that it's not.
Any objection to,
No.
Rob, please?
Actually, I do. This isn't just for mayor, it's for everyone, including us. The oath of office. It says each alderman, alderwoman, each other officer, each member of commission, board, committee.
Oh,
So it's
Oh,
not, Yeah,
I
it's
guess I
not just
didn't do
for
the
mayor.
research on this. I was making an assumption that this particular requirement is sitting in miscellaneous. And so therefore it's a request, but I'm sorry, I didn't do the research. So I don't know if that's the basis for the proposal.
I'd have to look at it. I mean, if it's for everybody, it may need to stay there. If it's just for the mayor, you can move it up. But Rob's right. All boards and commissions have to take an oath of office.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
looking at it now. Rob's right.
What?
He's right. Rob's right. It's for everybody. So it really ought
It's
to
for
be
everybody. Okay,
miscellaneous.
so do I hear agreement on position 25?
No.
Not
Reject.
hearing agreement, do I hear disagreement?
Yes.
Disagree.
I disagree and say it should stay where it is.
Yeah, position 25 is turned down. Position 26, city council provide for the codification or recodification of the ordinance of the city no less than once every 10 years in bound or loosely form.
It's already being done. I mean, they're talking about, I mean, I don't know if Jacqueline's on the call, but I think this is already,
This is what Mike said at the beginning.
Yeah.
He said
Yeah,
it's
he
sitting
did.
right on my
Oh,
desk
you're right.
over here.
You're
yeah,
right.
it's already
You're
being
right.
done. It's not necessary.
Do I hear any support for position 26?
No.
Do I hear any disapproval of position 26?
Yes.
Show of
Yes.
hands?
Disapproval, however, yes. Yes.
That's probably not the right word. Okay, Eileen, position 26 is turned down.
Okay.
Position 27, I was a little bit stuck with this. And this, by the way, is the last one. Recommend changes in the design and construction techniques now required in city private and commercial buildings. Is there a building code? Is that what this is all about?
I
We
don't
don't
know.
know.
Who put that in? I mean, this is all code stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This is
Okay.
not charter stuff.
do I hear any support for position 27?
Hold on, where's I'm looking for the public property recommend use in city private to include in. Yeah, there's really no explanation for why we would want to do that. I kind of understand it, but yeah, no, I
But is this the building code? Are we talking about?
Yeah, it sounds that way. I mean, I think it's a good thing, but I don't think it's something we necessarily need to recommend, so.
Okay, do I hear any support for position 27?
No support.
Not hearing
From
support. Eileen, position 27 is rejected. Paul?
Let's just take a quick,
I gotta run, everyone.
Yes.
We're gonna see each other all again. I know, we better. Thank you all so much. I really
Yes.
have enjoyed this, and we'll see you. Let's have a party. We'll see you soon.
Yes. Thanks.
Yes, we
Thanks
should
much, Paul.
definitely organize a get together for
All right.
our commission.
See you.
Well, it
Thank you.
depends on whether they accept or reject. It'll be a party or a wait,
No.
right?
No. We'll-
See you
we'll-
all later.
can
we'll
I
have
make
it
a,
together.
I know Paul said we don't have quorum. Can I make just a quick thing, Andy, as you review this? There's a difference between rejecting and withdrawing. And I think what I'm hearing from a lot of these is they're being withdrawn, not rejected necessarily. So when you look at them again, you may want to think of that.
That's an
Oh,
excellent
yeah,
point,
correct.
actually.
Correct,
There's a
yes.
difference. And
That's an
so
excellent
Well,
point.
yeah.
I'm kind of putting that in. What I'm hearing is withdraw, but then I'm hearing at the end reject. So I'm just saying that up front, and I'll put that in my notes for asking.
That's fine. Yeah, well, I really did mean withdraw. So because we've had proposals, we were essentially voting on proposals, and now the proposal is withdrawn. So
Right.
you're right.
So,
It
okay.
is
And then the
withdrawn.
last one is also just withdrawn. This is to include 2 at-large members. We're putting that into something else.
Yeah, the one on position 24.
Okay. I will work on this tomorrow and see if I can, what I'll try to do, and Andy, maybe you would, I'll pull out what remains. To some,
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll have conversations over the weekend.
right, but I think it would be really helpful, given your timeline, that we need to get this out to the full committee, and especially for the people that weren't able to join us tonight.
Correct.
Mhm,
Yeah, very
mhm.
good point. Very good
You
point.
know, especially if it's somebody that, and we may want to make, you know, maybe one of us from either you, Paul, or I may want to call some of the people such as Ben or Lawrence or some of the people that did put forth some of these things, and we've withdrawn them, and give them an understanding of what we were thinking.
Is there any other business
Well, I think we
Well,
have to adjourn.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, there's no business
No
anymore.
No business.
Motion
Does
to
this-
adjourn.
Eileen, does this mean we can't adjourn?
We can
We-
adjourn.
We,
We should adjourn.
but
I
we
think
can't
we
have a
just did
motion.
when Paul left.
We can't, we can't have a motion that we should have adjourned while he was still on the call.
Well,
Okay,
we're adjourning due to lack of quorum.
I want
There you
to,
go.
and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to socialize after this thing is all over, but I also want to thank you very much for all the hard work that we put into getting us to where we are today. And we're not totally across the finish line yet, but we'll get there.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
All right,
everybody.
everybody.
This has been
Okay.
and thank you to Kia, and thank you to the
Oh,
cable
yes,
TV
definitely.
folks
Yes.
as well.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Takia.
Thanks much, Takia.
You're welcome.
Have
Bye-bye.
have a good night. Cheers.